Hi everyone, sorry I can't be there in person today. I'm Sarah Middle and I'm a third year PhD student at the Open University, looking at how linked data might best be integrated with ancient world research, what the potential benefits might be, and the usability of existing resources. I'll be starting off today's session with a brief introduction to linked data for ancient world research, which demonstrates where each of our case studies fits in. I'll then talk about my PhD research and share some of my initial research findings. Using a linked data approach means that the various features of digital resources are described in a machine-readable way, which allows connections between resources based on these features. If resources from multiple collections are represented in this way, this can facilitate searching across collections and can highlight relationships between resources that would not have been apparent through any other means. In the example here, we have 3 cultural heritage institutions, which a user would normally have to search using separate catalogues. Each contains an example resource relating to Sparta in some way. If they're described using linked data, each object can then be connected to the same authoritative resource that represents Sparta. This means that a search facility can be developed that allows one search for Sparta, for example, to query all 3 collections. In fact, we'll be hearing more about a tool that does just that during the case study on Pelagios later in this panel session. One source of linkable data comes from structured metadata that's used to describe digital objects. In the example here, we have some typical information that you might expect to see in a museum catalogue to describe an object. Features such as its title, some kind of identification number, and associated concepts such as relevant people, places, techniques, materials, and chronological periods. If you have structured metadata like this, it can be converted to linked data by aligning each of these features with recognised ways of describing them. For example, by connecting any references to a person to an established authority file that represents that person. In this way, the computer knows that this piece of information refers to this person and interprets the data differently from a string of plain text. Later in this panel, we'll hear from a variety of projects that have sought to represent these concepts in a meaningful way. We've already heard about Pelagios' relationship to place, but other case studies include Snapdragon, which identifies and disambiguates ancient people, whose information was previously held in multiple datasets. Ngodo, which works by aligning dates and dating systems from the ancient world, using similar methods to geographical gazetteers. 2 further case studies focus on archaeological objects that meet particular criteria, and additionally provide identifiers for terms relating to concepts such as types, materials, and techniques. Numisma facilitates the description of ancient coins and mints, and keramikos.org facilitates the description of ancient pottery. Finally, Paula Granados Garcia's work on cultural contact in early Roman Bioetica uses existing vocabularies and systems like these other examples to model this process and address a specific research question on the topic. Hopefully that's given a bit of a flavour of what linked data can do for ancient world research, but how does it relate to my PhD? So as I'm sure we're all aware, discovering relationships, for example, between people, places or events is key to ancient world research, but the relevant material is often held in disparate collections. Connecting these resources using linked data has the potential to be hugely beneficial for ancient world research, but previous research has shown that uptake of linked ancient world data still tends to be fairly minimal. To investigate this issue, I've been talking to ancient world researchers about their use of digital tools and resources in general, as well as their use or production of linked data where applicable, and how these fit in with their research processes. This has involved a survey and a series of follow-up interviews with a sample of participants. In studying digital methods for ancient world research, my PhD aims to make recommendations for how linked data resources can be made more useful and usable by effective integration with existing ways of working. The survey ran between the 21st of March and the 2nd of May last year. and when it closed, it had received 212 complete and partial responses from ancient world researchers in 32 countries, predominantly the UK, the US, and Germany. Thank you very much to everyone who took part. There was a broad spread of age ranges and a good gender balance. 23% of participants stated that they had knowingly used one or more linked data tools or resources, and these participants were asked a further set of questions about their experiences of using linked data. I suspect that these figures are unlikely to be representative of ancient world researchers as a whole, however, because those who chose to take part in the survey are likely to be more digitally engaged in the first place and therefore more likely to have experience with linked data. I spent the next few months analysing the survey responses and producing a series of questions to be explored during follow-up interviews, which took place between November last year and March this year. At the end of this phase, I had interviewed 16 participants with a broad range of digital experience and skill levels, while also aiming to be representative of the survey population as a whole. Several survey questions asked about the research methods participants associated with digital resource use or production. To ensure these methods were classified in a consistent way that could readily be analysed, I incorporated terms from the Taxonomy for Digital Research Activities in the Humanities, or TADIRA, which was developed following several previous projects that sought to describe and define research methods in the digital humanities and beyond. Terms are categorised under the broad headings of research activities, objects and techniques, from which I selected research activity terms. These research activities fall under the categories of capture, creation, enrichment, analysis, interpretation, storage and dissemination, as well as some meta-activities. In classifying survey responses using these terms, initial results have shown that ancient world researchers primarily use digital tools and resources in general for discovering, communicating and publishing. The rest of the top 10 activities shown on the slide are fairly generic and could apply to multiple tasks, projects and research goals. However, data recognition, annotating and visualisation are a bit more specialised, and along with the top method of discovering, stand out as potentially being particularly relevant to linked data. Looking just at linked data tools and resources, I found that these are predominantly used for gathering, discovering and data recognition. In a similar way to digital tools and resources more generally, discovering is near the top of the list, and again we see data recognition, visualisation and annotating, indicating that these could indeed be particularly amenable to linked data integration. The other methods included in the top 10 appear to be much more specialised than those associated with general digital tools and resources, indicating that perhaps linked data tools and resources have a more specialist approach. During the interview phase, I focused discussions on the 5 methods I felt could benefit most from a linked data approach, and these were annotating, data recognition, discovering, gathering and visualisation. While I'm still analysing the results, it's become clear that far from being discrete processes, these research methods are all connected. In particular, discovering is strongly related to the other 4 methods, which are often conducted either simultaneously with discovery, to facilitate discovery of information, or as a subsequent step following the discovery process. So, for example, data recognition could be seen as a form of discovery. Visualisation of data can allow discovery of further information, and materials found through the discovery process are often then gathered together and/or annotated. So, an initial finding from this research is that development of future linked data resources should take the multifaceted nature of the research process into account, rather than considering these resources as being part of a series of individual steps that take place in isolation from each other. I'm still in the process of analysing and writing up my results, which I hope to complete by next year. From these findings, I will develop a series of recommendations for the future production of linked ancient world data resources, which should hopefully also be more broadly applicable to digital resources in general and to the humanities as a whole. Thank you.